Very good. Terrific. Well, thank you, Lynn. Very much appreciate the kind introduction. My name is Vic Ulsh, and I am looking to do a review of Illahee Preserve from the standpoint of what it is, give you a little bit of a oversight of what Illahee Preserve has to offer. Also talk about some of the history as well as the volunteer maintenance that is ongoing and I think has been a real successful project or experiment with Kitsap County. And then Jim Aho is going to take over and work through the current and future plans for expansion, which have been substantial and are quite ambitious here from this point forward. Kitsap or Illahee Preserve is a Kitsap County park, and it is located in the dead center middle of the most densely populated area of Kitsap County. And if we look at these aerial photos, you can see the dense development around in East Bremerton and this green oasis right in the middle. And we've got a few different photos to kind of put that into perspective, but you start seeing all the gray area around both East Bremerton and sprawling out towards central Kitsap. As you drive down the road, you don't really notice it so much because there's green belts along the road, but you get back on, there's a good shot where you see and just all the development that's around, and this being Illahee Preserve. So really an important forested oasis that's preserved right in the middle of the most densely populated area of the county. You get it from this area. This would be out over Bainbridge, the aerial shot coming back. And Illahee Preserve does come down into the Illahee Creek corridor with really area all up and around that's forested there. Illahee Preserve is about 600 acres total, and that would include Rolling Hills Golf Course, which is also county owned now. So about 450 acres, I do believe, that would be just undeveloped forest land. The forest itself it's a beautiful mix of Douglas fir, Western Red Cedar, Western Hemlock, Western White Pine, and deciduous red alder, and madrone, which is an evergreen, Pacific madrone, big leaf maple, and even some Pacific yew. So it's really a beautiful forest, a very much a mixed deciduous and evergreen forest. The property was originally DNR land and was logged in the late 20s, and then parts of it were logged in the early 60s. So was intended to be used as DNR land, and fortunately it was so small that it was not really an efficient piece of land for them to be working on as an ongoing logging operation. So mostly what you've got now for Illahee Preserve is second growth forest. When there is some parts really more towards the come on, I'll get there. Here we go. The creek beds. This is really a deeply incised canyon through here, and then going down towards the sound, which is fortunately it's provided some areas where they just didn't log. So there is what we believe to be old growth forests in that area. And then you've got the North Fork and the South Fork of Illahee Creek that run through parts of Illahee Preserve, and then starting down in the main channel, and even the tributary, we own part of that area there. So really quite a spectacular piece of land that does have varied topography. Right down the middle, there's kind of the ridge that runs through Manette, and it divides Illahee Preserve into two different watersheds. Basically, you've got the Illahee Creek watershed that drains off towards Puget Sound directly east. And then over here, the headwater for Still Creek runs off the golf course, and you don't really see it here, but it runs out and it's culverted under the highway and park and ride and what have you. And running to the north and goes out and dumps into Brownsville Bay, I guess, Burke Bay, is that what it's called? Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, come on. Use this here map. We have three parking lots that we use, three main door entries, one off of Riddell Road, which was our original parking lot. Our main parking lot now, which is right off of the corner of Fuson and Elmira. And just to put into perspective, there's Lowe's, you've got Fred Meyer, United Moving and Storage, Rolling Hills Golf Course. So that was right near and also Kitsap Mental Health is right across the street from us. But that is the main front door, our main parking lot, 36 stall parking lot here. That's just at the corner of Elmira and Fuson. And then the other parking lot we claim is at the corner of McWilliams and Highway 303, which is directly across from Safeway and Safeway across the street, across the highway, and Walgreens across McWilliams. But the topography is really quite dramatic as you move off this ridge, pushing water to either side. The Illahee Preserve has about 6 miles of trails. Shot by there. This is a map that the Kitsap County just updated. They were looking to standardize their maps for trails. And if you go online for Kitsap County, they have a trails section where you can go into most all of the major walking trail parks in Kitsap County and get a very similar looking map. So this one, the way they did it, it's a little large scale. It doesn't just focus on the trail system, such as our fire map was, but it's still a really good map to navigate by. The trail system, the main part of the trail system originally was logging roads, because the roads are in there. What was interesting is that there was a lot of off-road vehicle traffic that loved going in there. But what's neat is we were able to close off the entry points, so cars and for the most part ATVs or motorcycles don't go in there. And over time, which is basically 20 years, the trails have really healed up. We were worried about that because the experience of walking down a logging road in a nature, not as good, but they've really healed up with the vegetation growing in on either side with the sword ferns and salal and evergreen huckleberry. It's really been nice to see how that's healed up and turned into really appealing trails. We do have in the very center over here what we call our wildlife meadow. And basically that there was an area that was reportedly a logging camp way back. Well, a report from a guy that grew up in the neighborhood in the early 60s, there was a logging camp there. And when that cleared out, it was an open area, and the off-road vehicle enthusiasts love to go in there and do donuts. And they just packed that down. So we thought, okay, let's work with that and turn it into more of a meadow. It's the only open space that we have throughout the entire preserve. So for varied habitat, you've got a forest edge, and for birds, love the forest edge. It's a good place to go in there and look around for an owl or even raptors that are flying through there looking for critters that are running around in the grass. So, but a neat feature and some varied habitat. Illahee Preserve, I say, is a Kitsap County park. And what I think is really brilliant that our county did under the Growth Management Act in the early 90s, our commissioners designated and committed to originally have a large, what they call heritage park in the south, in the central, and in the north. And the intent was that, gee, things are developing fast. We need to save this land before it gets paved over. And so they started off with Banner Forest in the south, Illahee Preserve in the central, and North Kitsap Heritage Park in the north. But it was such a popular concept that they quickly said, why stop with one? And they went on and added Coulter Creek in the south, Newberry Hill Heritage Park in the central, and Port Gamble Forest, which is 3,500 acres, I believe, up north, which is just amazing. So tip a hat to those county commissioners in the early 90s for making that commitment. And in the process, Illahee Preserve was created. As far as the management of Illahee Preserve, it is a Kitsap County park, but I give Jim Aho great credit. He was part of that original crew that was working with the county when they were preserving Illahee Preserve. And Kitsap or county parks in general, they don't have funds. They don't have the personnel. It's like when the budget gets tight, parks are the first to get cut. And when they start to recover, parks are the last to get refunded. So it's an amazing thing. And then you see all these polls then where people put parks high on the list of their preferences. So it seems like a disconnect there. But what largely through Jim's efforts and the reputation and integrity he had with Kitsap County Parks, talked to them about, instead of having their personnel try to be involved in managing or maintaining the park, to allow a volunteer group to step forward. And they agreed. And so I do believe Illahee Preserve was the first in the county to allow a stewardship group to largely manage and maintain a park of that nature. In this case, it's a trail system. We don't have playgrounds or ball fields or whatever. And so from that, a stewardship group was formed, and I've been chair of that stewardship group. But there is an incredible crew of volunteers that have come together with our leadership team and with the boots on the ground maintenance that has carried forward here for the last 21 years. And a critical part of that has been East Bremerton Rotary, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. Illahee Preserve we're lucky it's here, even with the commissioner's commitments in the early 90s. The Department of Natural Resources, as I mentioned earlier, looked at Illahee Preserve, or that property that is now Illahee Preserve, as being an inefficient property for logging. And in 1978, and again in 1987, and a third time in 1996, they went out to the public and started making noise about putting that property on the auction block, which, if you look at, as we saw here earlier, all the development around Illahee Preserve, well, there's a lot of infrastructure there that would be really appealing for a developer to come in. You got roads, you got water, you got power, you got sewer. And so fortunately, people in the community stepped up and said, whoa, what's going on here? Now, we're real key leaders in our community, people like Judith and Erwin Krigsman and Jim Aho, and a number of folks that stepped up and resisted and battled the DNR and got the county on board with trying to not allow that to be sold. And finally, with that last effort in 1996, that was the time when the county was looking at acquiring properties for their heritage parks, and Illahee Preserve, was like cosmic timing. It all came together just so perfectly. So with that, it transferred over to from DNR to Kitsap County in 2001, and really an interesting story behind getting that all done. If any of you know the school teacher Audrey Boyer, the longtime teacher locally, it just so happened that Frank Chop, who was at that time Speaker of the House, or chair for the Speaker of the House for the state of Washington government or legislature, was a student of hers in class. Frank Chop grew up on Petersville Road. As a child, he was on Petersville Road, just south of Illahee Preserve, and Illahee Preserve was his playground. Audrey Boyer was his favorite teacher. So Audrey Boyer went down and talked to Frank about Illahee Preserve, and Frank's got the purse strings to be able to put a budget item in there, and nobody opposed it, and it passed. So it all worked out that for the county to be able to buy that property from the state. But don't ever estimate the power of a school teacher. I think that is a heck of a lesson right there, and so fortunate, really cosmic, that all came together as it did to allow the Illahee Preserve to be what it is today. As I say, that was in 2001. The original acres, original size was 352 acres, and now all the way up 600 and growing. And Jim will talk about that a little more here in a little bit. One of the things that happened along the way was a trade of some land with North Prairie Water, where in this area there's a pump station, in this area there's a water tower, and then down over here, North Prairie Water owned a big chunk of land, 66 acres, 80 acres, something in that range. And they were leasing the pump station property and leasing the water tower. And so county was able to do a trade with them. So county got 66 acres of forest land. And instead of leasing the North Prairie Water, leasing their pump station and land that had the water tower on it, that was deeded over to them in exchange, an acre and a half, maybe something like that, I think, for 66 acres, which I think was a great trade for degraded property that was already developed out. Let's see here. If you've been to the parking lot at Elmira, you've noticed this big rock, which I guess from research that's been done is considered an erratic, that a glacier dumped it there. Not quite there, it was nearby. So when we were building the parking lot, that it got dug up and put there. But Jim's vision as the money guy and trying to figure out how to be able to get to get money donated, I guess, what have you, to be able to accumulate money, use this rock as a dedication rock for those that have provided significant funds to help on some of the expansion. And if you see here, this plaque is on there, which commemorates that relationship between teacher and student that I mentioned before, between Audrey Boyer and Frank Chop. So pretty cool stuff. But that is an impressive rock, and there's quite a number of names on there of folks that have been generous to Illahee Preserve, and that is actually at Rolling Hills Golf Course on a rock. The plaque here, but Don Rasmussen essentially donated Rolling Hills Golf Course and some adjacent land to the county for some minor feedback to some of his charity causes, which another phenomenal donation that Don Rasmussen and his family provided to the county. The parking lots I mentioned, the parking lot at Thompson Lane. There we go, Thompson Lane. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Thompson Lane up here, when it was put in 2004, and now it's seven stalls only, and frequently is filled up. The parking lot on Elmira went in 2009, and it's 36 stalls, including some bus parking, which is really handy for some of the volunteer work that we do. And the oh geez, I'm going backwards here. Just a sec. The shelter that you see in the background, that was built by funds donated by East Bremerton Rotary, and that went in 2017. But it didn't cost the county a thing, just with support from local Rotary. And I guess we have some trail shots here. Oh, another cool thing that has happened with Illahee Preserve is 2 different times Leadership KidSAP has targeted Illahee Preserve for a project. And if you're familiar with Leadership Kitsap, they have something like 35 or 40 people per class. And the intent is they help grow leaders for our community. And they get them out and introduce them to a wide range of topics, government leaders, business leaders, issues throughout Kitsap County. I think it's a 9-month program. But one of the things that they're in their, I guess, curriculum is that they divide up in teams, like 5, 6, 7, 8 people, and go out and identify something in the community that they want to try to improve and focus on one topic. And twice we have been the beneficiary of Leadership Kitsap and their dedication. In 2009, they came in and wanted help. They chose Illahee Preserve, and we said, okay, what do you see we need? And they went out and looked it all over, and they said, your trail system is really confusing, because we had a map that was just kind of a bunch of squiggle lines, and they say, we think you need navigation help. Yeah, we agree. So their concept was to come up with numbers at each intersection. And you can see there, that's right out of the parking lot, that these composite posts in the ground with a number on it. And this being the number. And they went through and did the whole trail system and put numbered markers at every intersection, and then created the map, which we've seen there, that's got the corresponding numbers on it. So if you have no clue about Illahee Preserve and you want to go out and go wander around, used to be it might get lost, and then I'd get a phone call, heck, how do I get out of here? But now, I mean, and you can dial that up, Kitsap County or Illahee Preserve Trails map, and you can get it on your phone and go wandering around and paint by numbers, as I call it, as you go through there. So it was a wonderful improvement for us to get not just a physical improvement of those marker numbers, but also to have a map that went with it. And fortunately, the team that had the Leadership Kitsap team had an engineer in there too, which was very helpful as far as piecing that together. But what was really neat is the county, they didn't have this elsewhere, but they saw what we had done and they go, ooh, good idea. And so what they have done is for all their other trailed parks, like all the other heritage parks, they've developed the same numbering system with one addition. If you see here on, it's IP 31, whereas originally we just had, it was a routed into the post number. But what the county did is they went through and they said, okay, we're going to give each park a 2-letter prefix and then a number for that intersection. And it's my understanding what they've done for all of them is they've gone through and got GPS coordinates for each one of those marks on a map, so that if you go out and you trip and you sprain your ankle bad and you can't get up, and you know about where you are, or you call to one of these, you call 911 and say, hey, I'm at IP 31. And the EMS guys dial up the map and they know right where you are. And it's really cool. And it was all born out of a Leadership Kitsap project that was done here at Illahee Preserve. Lynn mentioned a wheelchair-friendly trail, and it's something that we've had on our mind for probably 10, 12 years, thinking about how could we do this, what could we do, especially with limited funding and what have you. And my liaison with the county, they have what they call natural resource coordinator, that is with the county that kind of oversees some of the various stewardship groups. And his name is Aaron Bartleson, and he's wonderful. He's an incredibly smart guy. Common sense just drips off him, and just really talented. Knows when to get engaged, knows when to back off and let us succeed. He does just a beautiful job. But one of the things that he has done in other areas, when he was in Colorado as a fish and game officer with the state of Colorado, and then as he's been here at Kitsap County Parks, is he's that a real key for him is trying to provide access. And initially it was really more for veterans, disabled veterans. So putting handicap accessible trails, or not handicap accessible, I suppose, wheelchair friendly, because we're not ADA compliant. We know that, and it's hard to really make that work. But we're doing the best we can as a wheelchair friendly trail. That is what we call it. And Aaron has done trails. I think he's got 4 other ones. So this is number 5 that he has worked on for sections of trails, not necessarily really, really long ones, but in this case, coming out of our Illahee main parking lot in Elmira and Fuson. We'll go back to this map. There's the main parking lot at Elmira and Fuson. And if you head off this way, it's a loop that is about 400 yards of hard packed trail. And actually getting together with Lynn on Monday, hopefully the weather holds, because we want to do a dry run to get feedback from real users. What the bed of that trail is quarter minus gravel. Now that sounds like, oh my gosh, it's not going to work. Well, that's what they've done on the other ones that Aaron Bartleson has worked on. And it packs down so hard. You wouldn't believe how hard that is now. When it first went down, a little soft, you get some rain on it, you get some people walking on it, and it's like asphalt. It's amazing. So, but we need to do some refinements, and I'm looking forward to getting together with Lynn and getting feedback on, okay, how do we really finish this? And we're gearing up. Everything goes right in April to get more gravel delivered and do the refinements that hopefully really make it attractive and usable for those that are mobility impaired. And you get down to it, for all the work we do, people say, oh, thanks for all the work you do. The biggest compliment for us is to see people out on the trail. The biggest compliment that's going to happen for us on this trail is to see people using it. And so that's rewarding to us. It's really, really cool. And so very excited about this trail. And we're hoping to get it done in April, finish it. And that's after Lynn gives us some input here this next week. As far as support, what I'd like to say is Illahee Preserve is 97% managed and maintained by volunteers. It's just boots on the ground people in the community that care about what's going on here. And it's not county money, it's not county staff, it's just people that care. And I think and Jim, in my eyes, was the inspiration for that. To be able to have the county risk doing it, but they had such confidence in Jim. And I think the experiment has been wildly successful, and they would certainly agree as they look at all the other stewardship groups that have been created through the various parks that don't have the ball fields and such. Of course, we like to think that we're the best, and I think there's good reason for that. So, but it's been a heck of a successful experience or an experiment. Really, folks that have been key in making this happen is we've got our community volunteers, but we also are able to benefit from other organizations. I'm a member of East Bremen Rotary, as Lynn mentioned, and in 2005, I went to the board and said, because I've been chair since 2004, and in 2005, I went to the board for East Bremen Rotary and said, guys, this is such an incredible project, and it's volunteer. It's just so perfect for what East Bremen Rotary stands for. And they adopted Illahee Preserve as a major project in 2005. And the amount of labor, the real boots on the ground leadership is significantly composed of East Bremen Rotarians. And we saw a sign that the big signs, the entry signs, they're about $3,000, $3,500 a piece. There's now one on Highway 303, one at the corner of we're at the main entry in the parking lot, one up at Riddell, and there's another one that's been made we're waiting to get permission to install it at the corner of Riddell and Elmira. But East Bremen Rotary has paid for all of those. So for the county, that's what do you want to call it, $12,000 worth of signage right there. The shelter that we saw here earlier, and maybe we'll go through just a sec. We'll go through a few lovely trail shots and see. Yeah. The trail is just beautiful. but yeah, East Bremerton Rotary would be, and that's a small work party that we had here, oh gosh, in October. The other, another group that's been very instrumental in helping us is the United States Navy. And it's been really neat that various commands, various ships come into port, and certain ships are really on board with having their people out in the community as opposed to stirring up trouble. And what's really cool is certain crews are really into coming out and helping too. We just finished up our 10th work party with members of the USS San Juan, which is a submarine that's in for decommissioning. Tremendous bunch of guys to work with. And of all things, right there, that's the commanding officer of the ship. Now, not just lip service, but get off your backside and go help. And it's just a wonderful guy. Yeah, that action photo. Okay, leaning on shovel photo. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, and just general folks from the community. And a huge impact for us is the Washington Youth Academy. And for those not familiar with Washington Youth Academy, basically Bremerton was selected in 2008, or at least it opened in 2008, as a school to help kids, high school kids, mostly could be sophomores, but juniors primarily, that have kind of lost their way, got behind in school, probably had a little bit of trouble in their past, and they have to commit themselves to want to improve, want to get back on track. In most all cases, when you talk to these kids, their family and their home life is a disaster. You hear about the mother on drugs, the dad in prison. I mean, it's heartbreaking. And these kids on their own are saying, yeah, I commit. I want to do this. It's not a court mandated thing. But Bremerton has the statewide facility for this program. And twice a year, they have 5.5 months sessions for about 175 kids. They have a third of them are girls, 2/3 of them guys. And part of, it's a very regimented program run through the Washington National Guard. They have an intense education component through the Bremerton School District to be able to get kids on an accelerated class and get them caught back up, because every one of them is behind in school because of all the trouble or unfortunate circumstances that they're having in life. And a brilliant thing with the Youth Academy is that one of the components of their curriculum is, I think it went from 40 hours to 48 hours of community service during their 5.5-month period that they're there. The idea of think beyond yourself, get engaged in the community. You're not just here to make trouble and think about your own little problems, but to get out and engage and work with people and be selfless. And it is incredible to work with these kids. 4 times a year, we get them two per session. And primarily what we do with them is put wood chips on trails. We couldn't do that if we didn't have the manpower of basically 48 to 50 kids that show up on a school bus. And we've got them for 5.5 hours, 4 times a year. And they move a lot of wood chips onto trails that the other parks, they don't take the time to try to do, the stewardship groups. It is a lot of work. It's a ton of work. But our trails, as you talk to folks that are runners, particularly, we have people that come from other parts of the county to run on our trails, or folks that maybe are a little tender on the knees to be able to walk on our trails because they have a little softer cushion. And it varies and flows. We got behind on our wood chipping through COVID because the Youth Academy shut down for, as far as being out in the public for a better part of 2.5 years. But we're back on track actually at the end of the month on February 28th. We've got a work session scheduled with them. But when you see those wood chips on the trails, you can thank Washington Youth Academy, because those are the guys that are doing it. And as much as it helps preserve, it's also very rewarding to us to be able to interact with those kids, to provide an example of community service, to talk to the kids and encourage them. So it's really a neat thing. And Washington Youth Academy right here in Bremerton, and it seems like there's so few people that really know that. Folks or kids that come from all over the state. So very neat. USS Nimitz, hooray. they had a real big day putting gravel down on this trail. So the Nimitz also been a key player for the wheelchair-friendly trail. Well, we talk about community partners and East Bremen Rotary being a really big part of that. Washington Youth Academy, I would look at as a community partner. But also United Moving and Storage. I would strongly encourage you to patronize United Moving and Storage for, if nothing else, um, their support of Illahee Preserve with a Go Mini. And we have a picture of that too, where, instead of having to scramble together to get 40 wheelbarrows from the community on a day we have Washington Youth Academy, United Moving and Storage donated to us for our use a Go Mini, which is a big storage box that they can put on a big wrecker truck. And what I call instant work party in a box, where we've been able to get donated wheelbarrows and take some donated funds like from Rotary and from the community. And by wheelbarrows, I think we've got the better part of 30 wheelbarrows that we can just hit the ground running, and a bunch of tools, pitchforks and shovels and what have you. So it's really handy. But United Moving and Storage, got to put a big plug in. I can't imagine. I mean, we've been using that Go Mini for 14 years. And they've just been very generous. And when we need it delivered, I just say, hey guys, and they're short on their boxes too, because they're really popular. So they've been just really generous with us for providing that Go Mini. But I think, mostly it's just the spirit of the community coming together to take care of Illahee Preserve and to make it what it is now. Just a real quick shot on some challenges that we've had to deal with. When we first took over the property, I mentioned the off-road vehicle stuff that was going on. 23 abandoned car bodies got pulled out of there. 23 abandoned car bodies, rotting hulks of car. And fortunately, Chico Towing, cars, yes. And so Chico Towing had a small tow truck, a little Datsun tow truck. I mean, it was a mini truck. I didn't believe they made such a small thing that could work through the roads, the logging roads that were there back then. And they hauled every one of those out of there to clean it up. But it was ugly, and just a lot of garbage and stuff that the Illahee Preserve, which was the Illahee Preserve as a DNR property, had really been abused. So there was a lot of garbage and a lot of dumping that all got cleaned up. We deal with homeless camps, car camping there as well. But it's a matter of vigilance. We got so many people that are really tuned in to what's going on in Illahee Preserve. Talk about the shelter and East Bremen Rotary. The Go Mini, there's our Go Mini. It looks smaller than it really is because we've got a lot of stuff in there. And also the USS San Juan back to help us. And that gets into Jim. Whoop, come on. But we're done. Okay. Couple of finishing notes. In our stewardship plan, we've got a couple of key things that really resonate with me as far as objectives of stewardship for Illahee Preserve. And I'll just read the 2 points here. To establish and develop a premier nature preserve and park for the education and enjoyment of this and future generations. And I think beautiful. And a second one is to preserve to the greatest extent possible the natural character of Illahee Preserve lands and the Illahee Creek watershed, including vegetation and wildlife habitat. And I think that really captures what we're trying to accomplish there. The last thing I'll leave you with, we were looking at how do we protect the preserve? Gee, how about a conservation easement or deed restrictions or what have you? And I was asked to give a presentation, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago about Illahee Preserve at Olympic College. And I was on a speaking panel with a guy named Ryan Dix, who is Norm Dix's kid. And he was with Cascade Land Conservancy, which is merged into Conservation Northwest, I believe now. But I asked Ryan, I said, what do you guys do? How do you protect land? Can you use conservation easements or what have you? And basically said no, because the power of eminent domain can overrule zoning, can overrule conservation easements, can overrule deed restrictions, can overrule just about everything that the government decides. And I think what he said was basically, it's the power of the people. It's those that are willing to engage and stand up in the event the county budget gets tight or what have you, and they decide, gee, this Illahee Preserve property is a prime target for development and a quick sell to be able to extract funds from the property. But it's again, it gets down to the people, community engagement and the people to step up and protect the preserve. So that's enough for me. Turn it over to Jim Aho to talk about current and future planning.
All right. Yeah, my name is Jim Aho, and yeah, Vic and I work together because Vic's job is to take care of the preserve and with the stewardship group, and my job is to get more property, so to keep him busy. So it's kind of like I don't know if he appreciates me as much as I appreciate him.
Love you, Jim.
Yeah. So anyway, this is just kind of a trying to figure out where everybody's at. We had an Illahee film, and what we did is we actually showed it at the Admiral Theater a few years ago, along with a film about the Elwha, removal of the dams on the Elwha. And I'm just curious, did anybody go to see that at the Admiral Theater years ago, 2008? Okay. And then the other thing we did is we did an aquifer presentation at the Norm Dick Center. We had some aquifer studies in Illahee, and so we had USGS people there, and we had a PhD that did some of the studies. So did anybody attend that one? All right. So we have an Illahee website, Oh, all right. Thank you. And then we actually have an Illahee community plan. And I don't know if people are aware of that, but if you don't control the zoning, you don't control anything. And so we have an Illahee community plan that was developed, and we have an Illahee green zone and so forth. So we control the zoning, so we can only have like 1 to 4 homes per acre. That makes things so you can have a septic system or you can have sewers. It'll accommodate everything. And then I assume that a number of you have visited the preserve.
Yes.
All right. And then we have the term the lost continent. That term came from Frank Chop. That's what they used to call it, the lost continent. And so when we were looking for grants, and we went to Frank and we got some grants. And when he said it was the lost continent, it sounded good to us. So I don't know if that helped or not. So anyway, so we created a 501c3, and we went to parks. And when we first got the preserve, and we said, well, this is really good, but this is only 352 acres, and we want 600 or 700. And they said, don't look to us. We're the low man on the totem pole. Like Vic said, we don't get any money and we don't have any staff. If you guys want to do something, you either have to work with the GPC, the Great Peninsula Conservancy, and I know they've been here, or you have to create your own nonprofit. And so that's what we did. And so the goal there is to see in the bold there, a forested Central Park and Wildlife Preserve. And some of the things that Vic also mentioned are all here on that list. But I was trying to see if any of those stand up. And I think we've talked about a lot of them already. We actually have 2 former homesteads that we want to use for future park amenities and so forth. And I'll talk about some of these other ones later. So the key issue is, how are you able to protect, this beautiful property? And the one way that you can is if you can't build on it, because it's got steep slopes. So we go in Illahee from sea level, 0 to 400 feet in a relatively short distance. So if you live in Illahee and we have a snow or ice storm, you're stuck because the roads, you can't get up the roads. And so it's kind of interesting. And then the other one on the right-hand side, the green area, there's no roads that go through there. And they couldn't put roads in there because you'd have to put bridges. And if you think roads are expensive, try to put a bridge through there. So we are basically saved by having a topography that protects the wildlife. So they have a place to go. So anyway, so what have we been doing? Some of us have been trying to get more property, and that big, here, this little thing right here, it says that in 2001, when we got the 352 acres, when Frank Chop put in that request, it was for basically $5 million. And what Frank said was, he said, he told Audrey, he says, I'll put it in, because Audrey said, you got to put in some money. And Frank said, I put it in there and nobody complained. Nobody said anything, and it went through. And that's how we got the initial 352 acres. And you see all of those years, we have been working on getting more properties along there. And so between 2001 and 2022, 20 properties have been acquired for $12.5 million. So now what we're doing is we're trying to figure out how to finish things up. Some of us are getting older, not Vic, but I'm getting older. And I'm telling you, we got to get stuff done. So phase one, we're looking at 30 acres down here. And then phase two, we're looking at wildlife corridors and so forth between the preserve and Illahee State Park. And then phase three, we're looking at a bunch of homes in there, and we'll talk about those. But this phase one is, we call it the crown jewel. And we call it that because it has a 1/4 mile of the South Fork of Illahee Creek. That's unbelievable. And the one thing that is a little bit more difficult, and that is, let's try and move that away. Oops. It's got a pond, and that pond is beautiful. The problem is it's backed up by a dam. And how many people would think that we have a dam, in Illahee, and in this area? And that dam was put in 1931, and nobody knew about it. And nobody knew about it until a few years ago, when we had to report it to the Department of Ecology. And because it backs up more than 10 acre-feet of water, it has to be registered with ecology, because dams can give out. And you hear about that all the time when areas get big rainfalls and dams breach, and they cause problems. And I'm going to show you a little bit about what would happen with this one. But so it's just a beautiful 30 acres, and nobody knew, or hardly anybody knows about the dam being there and so forth. So it's, so it's called Hattie's Pond and Dam. I guess I talk about some of that other stuff, but the beavers are trying to plug up. It's a culvert that has a riser on it, and they try to plug that up every night. And so I signed up for a HPA, hydraulic permit approval, with the Department of Fish and Wildlife to keep that thing clean. And I don't know why I did that, because but now we have a bunch of us that do that. So we have had to put fencing around it and other things around it, because the beavers are relentless. And the only good thing is,
what are you doing that for?
they're supposed to be, what we want them to do is, we have actually beaver dams upstream.
Oh,
And so we have 3 beaver dams. So now they are concentrating on those 3 beaver dams upstream. So they're not as active in this area here. So
so it's okay for them to go up there.
Absolutely. We like the beavers.
Put up signs and let them know.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, but if they plug that up, that would cause problems downstream. And this is what we call an inundation plan. And this has to be filed with emergency people, because if we have a problem there and they plug it up, it would cause that water level to rise. And if that dam breaches, it would take out Illahee Road. It would go down, take out Illahee Road. It would take out some houses down there and so forth. So we have some problems that we need to resolve. The county said, you want us to acquire this property? And they said, that's a liability. We don't want to acquire it. And so we got to work through a bunch of issues now to resolve that. The county still has the problem, no matter who owns it, it's still going to take out Illahee Road and do other things. So it's just one of those interesting things. When we started this, you never, what do you want to say? You never would have believed that we would be working with a dam and beavers and inundation plans and so forth. So the question is, where is Hattie's Pond? And there's a house along Perry Avenue that says Rainwood. That was actually the Elliott property. And yeah, that's what we're trying to buy, the Elliott property. But we got to buy it. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, because we got to buy it in 3 different parcels. And it's behind there. Yeah. And most people don't even know, that the pond is there, much less a dam and so forth. So, okay. So the question was, the comment was that there's been problem with beavers years and years ago. Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So the question is, what do we do with that property? So we're trying to make it into a park. And so we actually looked at Bremerton's park plan, and they need a park in East Bremerton. And so they're kind of looking at something on Olympus Drive, a parcel that they had, which really isn't big enough. And you can see in the red circle area, that's where, this property is that we're looking at. It's close by. This could satisfy as Bremerton's park in East Bremerton, in the more central area. So we eventually want to be working with Bremerton and the county and see if we can have some collaboration and come up with a park there. So the other one is, what do we do with the property and the ecological benefits? I talked about the beaver dams. So this is one of the dams. And then the other part of the property has a house on it that we're looking at as being an interpretive center. And then we're even looking at a park, what we call a watershed park. So the question was, is anybody living in the house? What happened is Elmer Elliott died. He was 100 years old, and he died a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, something like that, not that long ago. And he and his son were living there. And so not only did Elmer die, but his son Ron died too. And so now what's happening is the family is looking at all of the stuff in the house. And you can imagine how much stuff gets in a house for somebody that's 100 years old. And Hattie was Elmer's sister. And all of Hattie's stuff is in that house.
Sounds like me.
So what's happening is the family is coming there probably 4 or 5 days a week, trying to figure out what to do with all of the stuff that has been accumulated. So the question is about the house. Are they falling apart or not? So there's Hattie's house, which is a yellow house that we're probably going to have to take down. And what happens is the Parks Department, houses have to be roofed, they have to be ADA accessible, they have to go through a lot of stuff. So Hattie's house, we're probably going to have to take down. And it's a beautiful house. And yeah, so it's tough on the 2 remaining daughters of Elmer. They remember Aunt Hattie's house, or yeah. and they don't want to take it down, but we're gonna have to take it down. And then there's another old house that's there, and there's an old horse barn that we're gonna have to take down and so forth. But the house that we want to use for an interpretive center, that is where Elmer lived. He built that house in the 1950s when they had something called lockbox. And I think they came out of the University of Washington. They would qualify as a LED green house today. It's a beautiful house, well designed. So we want to use it as an interpretive center. Are you talking about the Avery homestead? All right. So yeah, when you're looking at buying property, and we did buy, the house where the Avery house is, and it's one of those unique homes that has been. This was built in the 1920s or 30s, and it's a beautiful home. And we need to do a cultural review. We've had cultural people come out there and look at it. So we got to decide: is it deteriorated so bad that it needs to come down? Or is it such a unique house that we could come through and have it as an exhibit? So we're still trying to decide that. Yeah, when you look at old properties, homesteaded properties, it's really kind of fun and kind of interesting, and you want to figure out what you can do. But I need to keep going here because we still got a little bit more to go here. So we're looking at a watershed park, and you can see the outline there. This is what the watershed looks like. And very rarely do you ever get on an almost self-contained watershed where there's very little development, and most of it is in its natural state. And so that's what we're looking at doing, having that whole watershed protected as much as possible. So we're looking at Hattie's Pond and all of those properties there, and the different things that we could do. We're looking at a pavilion, and we're looking at just different exhibits. Because if you have a watershed park, there's so much information that could be presented, during it or in a watershed park. So, but this is phase one. This is our challenge. Basically $3 million. I'm looking around, but I'm not sure that we have anybody here that wants to step forward. So just to go through a little bit, phase one, 16.8 acres. That's what we're looking at dealing with right now. That 16.8 acres is $1.374 million. And we are actually trying to close on that by the 28th, by next Friday.
Wow.
So today I've been working on this, and another guy actually asked one of our mutual friends, Joe Stevick with Windermere, to help us, because trying to do this, and we're looking at so much money from the RCO, so much money from the Department of Commerce, and so much money from Kitsap County. And it takes all of those people to come together, and we're going to try to pull it together. But then we have the next purchase, which is the 3.7 acres. This is the house that Elmer and Ron were living in that we want to buy. $609,000 is what the appraisal was. And the property owners, the estate says, well, we think it might be worth more than that. I said, oh no. So anyway, and we want to do that by the end of this year. And how we're going to do that, I don't know. But part of the reason that this 16.8 acres, when we get that, nobody knows about the pond. They wanted us to keep quiet about it because they didn't want people coming in and walking around and so forth. So now once we buy this, hopefully by the end of next week, it's public knowledge. We have beaver dams, we have a pond, and we got other things there. So and then there's the place where the actual dam is, that 9.6 acres, purchase number 3. That's the one that's going to be really interesting. A spillway needs to be put in there, and it could cost between $300,000 and $500,000. So we're dealing or talking to a contractor about, how do we do this? And we'd like to do this before the county, what's his name? Tim, he's what do they call the risk manager? He's the risk manager, and he's the one that says, Kitsap County, we don't want anything to do with the dam. So we're going to try to figure out how to do something about putting a spillway in there so we can eventually get the property. So anyway, so that's kind of where phase one is, the 30 acres and what we're dealing with, and it's going to be fun. So the other thing we're dealing with is phase two. Phase two is basically a bunch of properties that some of them that are what we call a wildlife corridor connecting the preserve to Illahee State Park. Some of us love wildlife, and we think that they should have a place to go back and forth and so forth. So these are some of the phase two things that we're dealing with now. We've actually closed on 3 of those properties and a couple more that we're working on. So the question is, where are these properties? They're basically up. If you look at Illahee Road, they're on the west side of Illahee Road, where it's steep and inclined, and there's no houses there, but it does provide a wildlife corridor, so deer and so forth, and it could be a trail, along there too. So people, a trail along there, so that people, rather than walking along Illahee Road, they could actually go on the trail. So the goal is to buy all of those properties along there, and every property is unique and you're dealing with landowners and property owners, and it's a challenge, but it's also exciting and kind of fun. So yeah, and I'm talking a little bit more about that one, and pretty soon our signs show up, like that upper sign there, for sale, and then we have to start trying to figure out what's for sale. Do we have enough money? Can we raise enough money? And how do we do that? And that was one that we didn't buy in time. The family wanted us to buy it, and they kind of gave us more time, but we had other higher priorities, so we didn't get it. So we didn't get that one on that upper sign there. But the lower sign here, the one in red, for sale, 3/4 acres. We bought that from a guy in California. He was a developer. He said, I can develop it. And then he said, well, I'm getting kind of old and stuff. Why don't I just sell it to you? So we bought that. And we actually, on this one, I talk about 2 north end properties. Oh no, the upper one. 2 properties on the south end of the county were gifted to the preserve by Kitsap Bank. And it was like, in fact, Vic and I were working on that one with Tony George. Yeah. So anyway, so it's kind of nice when some things happen like that, donations and so. But anyway, and then we got 2 north end properties. They were all ready to develop, and there's a big rock up above there, and the guy who was going to build there, Bill Prigger, some of you might know Bill, his wife Beverly said, Bill, I don't want you building there because there's this big rock on the hillside, and I'm worried that big rock could come down and hurt or demolish the houses and so forth. So because of Bill's wife getting involved, Beverly, we were able to buy 2 properties that were ready to go and be developed. Kind of interesting, some of the stories. So now we're getting to phase 3. Phase 3 is what we call the heart of the park. This is an area that was settled before Washington became a state in 1889, and subsequently what do we call the homestead here? the road, Thompson Lane, sorry, the Thompsons. I'll tell you, there are times when you get old, you get a little bit forgetful. So I'm glad Vic is here. So Thompson Lane had, and the reason it's called Thompson Lane is because that was actually the road between Bremerton and Brownsville. And this was in the late 1890s, or yeah, right around 1890. And so they homesteaded that, and it was about 8 acres or whatever. So when Washington became a state in 1889, and they had the school trust lands, it excluded that 8-acre parcel right there. And so, like I say, the road is Thompson Lane, and there's a bunch of parcels, and the county bought one of the parcels in 2000 and whatever it is, 2017. But we got to figure out what to do because, and if you want to know where it is in the watershed, it's in that red area over there. That's kind of where it's at. But it's interesting because this is an area where we have had bears, and the bears sometimes are reported getting into the garbage dumpsters and so forth there, which is kind of interesting.
Yes.
Yes, in fact, what I put this in here. We told them we wanted to buy this, and they said, "Well, let us look at that." And they said they could, if we bought it for what they're basically, what did we call those? The rentals and mobile homes and so forth. Well, people love to live in the middle of the preserve. They don't have any problem, getting somebody to rent these homes. In fact, people are waiting, to rent them. And so they said, there's no way they can duplicate, what they have there. You don't have enough money to buy to buy it for what they would want. And anyway, so now we're trying to figure out what do we do? There's 13 home sites in there. How do we do that? So right now we put in for a grant. We put it in last year, and we're hoping that we can that it'll be funded. And I think we're looking at least 1.2 million. And I'm not sure how the 2.4 in that. I took that from the grant papers. So sometimes what we do is buy a property and we call it a life estate. In other words, we let people live there, and then when they die or move, we get the property. So, and that's what we may have to do. And the fact that there's 13 properties and people aren't going to want to leave, and I don't know how long this is going to take. It's probably not going to be all done in my lifetime. But I'm hoping we get the money this year to get started on buying those properties. And the other thing is that some of those are rentals, and they're owned by people that are my age, and they're not going to live forever. And so we're saying, well, why don't we buy all your rentals and call it a life estate, and then eventually we'll get them. Anyway, okay, question. So the question is, the Universal Church, does it border the preserve? Yes. Yes, in fact, when you look out your window from your sanctuary, you look out towards the Illahee Preserve. And at one time, they were going to put in a lot of homes in there, and you would have looked out at a big development. And it was called Timber's Edge. And we eventually bought out Timber's Edge. It cost us so many $1 million to eventually buy that. We had to buy it in 2 stages. And I can't remember what the total amount was. It was a lot of money, but we did. And that's what we've been successful at doing this over and over and over again. So, but one more thing. I got one more slide, and then you can answer questions. But so what we did with when we bought out the first, I can't remember, anyway, we first started doing this, we said, we need to document this because otherwise nobody knows. So when we did a study and we had, the experts come in, the hydrologists and USGS and so forth, we said, if we don't document it, it's going to end up in a notebook and it's going to be put on somebody's shelf and you'll never know about it. So that's the reason we brought in a filmmaker and did the film Illahee Saving Puget Sound One Watershed at a Time. And the helicopter there actually has what they call a Cineflex camera. This is they were taking this camera on that helicopter from somewhere SeaTac or whatever, and they were going to the Elwha. And so we asked if we could have them stop over and do some pictures in Illahee. This was before drones. And so I forget, it cost us like $20,000 to get that the camera shots, using that. And that's what we used in the Illahee film. So it was beautiful. So now we're dealing with, do we want to have a film that either updated or another part of that. And it's kind of interesting because we have people that want to contribute to property purchases, but they also, and we have a mutual friend who said, why are we paying for a film? Talking about your friend John. Anyway, so I at times am trying to raise money, and right now I'm trying to raise money to tell our story because we've got a beautiful story, and we have a filmmaker who has actually done some of the interviews with people at New Hattie and so forth. So we're getting close, but so if anybody here likes films and wants to help, talk to me afterwards because we have a filmmaker who would like to do this. We've actually have a retainer with her right now, but we don't have all of the money yet. So anyway, but that's I know you got questions, so anyway, Vic or me, they'll let me know. So the film, actually what we did, we sold it at first. We had Blu-rays and so forth, and we sold it for $15 or $25, depending on what it was. But now we actually have it. You can get it on YouTube or whatever. And I think it's on one of our websites. We have a couple of them. It might be on the Lost Continent website, but it's available. How long is it? Oh, it's about 34 minutes. On this film, yeah, what they want, Shelley Sullivan is, and she has what we call Leaping Frog Films. She wanted $22,000 to update the film. So that's what we're dealing with. Yeah. The question is about the Parks Pros plan. And on March 5th, I think they're going to meet at the Silverdale fire station or whatever. That's where they have their community. No, yeah, somewhere around there. That's where they have their community. Katie Walters has the Central Kitsap meeting there the first Wednesday of every month. And so they're going to talk about the pros plan. I haven't. Newberry Hill, yeah, on Newberry Hill, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know what to say because the pros plan looks out, to the future, and so what we're doing with what we're trying to do, the watershed park, we need to be talking to the new parks director for Bremerton. And so what we're looking at is trying to get the parks director for Bremerton and the parks director for the county, because if we do a park there, a watershed park, it would benefit both Bremerton and the county.
Bremerton did their, right? Bremerton's doing the pros plan.
Right, they're like a year later, yeah, they'll be doing their pros plan. Maybe now, I guess.
No, I think we missed it. I think it was mid-February. Because I was thinking, I don't need to go to Bremerton. I'm thinking that's the city limits. I'm going to go to Central Kitsap.
Yeah. So what I understand is that pros plans are like every 6 years. And so Bremerton, I think, was like a year behind the county. And so Colette and their new parks director were gonna be working on that. Yeah, no, so it's really hard because when you're looking at taking like Bremerton, so you gotta be working with the mayor and their parks department. And then you gotta be working with the county and their commissioner and so forth. And so we actually want to do this. We want Bremerton and the county to come together and collaborate and have this beautiful watershed park. And so I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to approach that with the pros plan. This is,
A bunch of people showed up and said, we want to have a watershed park.
that's right. That's right.
So you're really asking, what can we do, or are there any meetings that we could go to promote this? Is that what your question is?
Yes, well, there's a meeting coming right up.
Right.
Right.
So, and I also wonder whether we've missed the one in Bremerton. But what I'm thinking is that maybe we could sort this out and put it on our website. And if we could work with you, Jim, that, a bit, Jim.
Yeah.
If we could work with you and get the right dates and maybe with you later and see what we could put on our website so everybody could contribute to this.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's March 5th because it's usually the first Wednesday of every month. I used to be on the Central Kitsap Advisory Committee or Central Kitsap, whatever it was. So we got another question over here. And so the question is about Enitai. And some of you have probably seen the signs about Enitai. Enitai is looking at trying to basically, because we're right on the border between Illahee and Enitai. And they would like to use the Illahee community plan. They would like to come say, we want it to be the Illahee Enitai community plan. They like our zoning, they like our protection of wild areas and natural areas. And the old Bremer estate is part of that I think it's 65 acres down there. And there are people who are trying to buy it. The Fishers own it. They bought it for like 3.5 million. I think they want about $6 million right now for it. The GPC is trying to figure out if they can buy some of it. And so I know the county is trying to figure out, what could be done. It's part of the Bremerton urban growth area, so it's a little bit complicated, but it's beautiful areas. And so people are trying to figure out how to, if Illahee can help Enitai by having some kind of joint venture and so forth. I don't know what the answer is. That's a hard one. So I'll give an example. The third beaver dam that we have on Illahee Creek on the South Fork, that goes into the headwaters of Enitai Creek. And so as those beavers build up that dam, it's going to flood over, to Enitai Creek. So we all are working together on what to do. So